Okay, no, I'm not trying to sell my very outdated laptop. It's a great laptop, I love it. But what I'm zooming in on now and showing you is that I came across an interesting site. It's called the Quilting Room with Mel. Now, I had never heard of this site before, and my first assumption was, when I saw the caption at the top, was that Mel must be a guy. Because at one point I had an Uncle Mel. Wonderful guy. But this is actually a blog or a site that's written by Melissa Shields Andy. And Melissa is obviously a girl. And what she's writing about in this article, the caption of it is electronic foot controls versus electronic foot controls versus electronic foot controls for vintage sewing machines. I kind of stumbled there because she kind of, the line is a little bit awkward to read. But what she's doing here is she's drawing a comparison between the contemporary or more contemporary electronic foot controls versus the older style electric foot controls. And her position is she really is a huge fan of the electronic ones. Matter of fact, she goes on to say, down here on this line right here, she goes on to say that, let's see, in my opinion, the introduction of the electronic motor controller, i.e. the foot control that's electronic, is the single most important improvement, I'm adding important for emphasis, that rewrote the sewing machine industry. Those are some pretty powerful words. She's obviously a huge proponent of electronic foot controls. And she goes on to write down here, let me get rid of this little advertisement on her page. Sorry about that, Melissa. She goes on to write down here in this paragraph down here, short note, if you sew slow for any length of time, the electric controller would get too hot to handle and in extremes could actually cause fires. So, and she goes on after that to kind of backpedal a little bit on that statement, but that statement struck me as profound. She's basically saying, as I move the camera now over to our little test ground, she's basically saying that this right here, which is an electronic foot control, is the god of gods when it comes to foot controls. And she even says in her article as well that if one of her vintage machines has a foot control go out, that's an older style electric one, like this one right here, that she immediately will jump at the opportunity to replace it with a foot controller like this. Now, I personally don't care if Melissa has an electronic or an electrical vintage style foot controller on any of her machines, but I do want to see if I can test her theory that if you operate a motor at slower speed for any length of time, that sucker's going to overheat. And so what I am going to do is zoom on my smartphone, which has gone dark because apparently I waited too long. And I'm going to open up a timer on it, and we're going to run at slow speed this FAF 332 motor, which pulls 1.3 to 1.5 amps. So we're going to run it for 5 minutes at a slow speed. But the first thing I need to do is I need to get a temperature on this foot control, okay? And I've got a handy dandy little thermo tester. So I'm going to spin my screen around just so I can hopefully see sort of what you're seeing, and hopefully you'll be able to see the numbers. So I'm going to come into the camera here, and I'm going to shoot this this foot control from a couple of different sides. So what I have right now is 59.3. I'm going to shoot it from the other side over here. 58.6 from the back, 59.1 from the bottom, 58.6. So any of you that are mathematicians, you can add those numbers up and then divide by the number of thermo checks that I just did, and you can put in the chat what our average temperature is if you're so inclined to do that. But what I'm going to do right now is plug this foot controller in and get ready to fire this puppy up. And I'm going to come a little bit wider angle so that we can watch this as it unfolds, and hopefully you'll be able to still see the timer. Yeah, I think you can still see the timer. We'll kind of go with an angle like that. All right, so I'm going to lock it in right there. And I'm only going to depress this foot control just a small amount. There we go, with my screen pointing the wrong way again. All right. All right, here we go. I'm going to try to start it at about the same time. We're going to be here for a while, folks, so if anybody needs to take a bathroom break or walk the dog or anything of that nature, feel free. I'm trying to keep it low and slow, and this motor obviously is not usually going to be operated at this low of an RPM for 5 minutes continuously. It's not likely to happen. And I think even Melissa would acknowledge that if I can operate this for 5 minutes at this speed, and I'll show you at the end by punching it up, that we are really, really low on the RPMs of this motor. And you know, it's not designed usually to operate this slow, this long, but we're trying to do it so we can do a fair test and put Melissa's claim to the test and see whether or not there's any validity to it. Because when you say that you can operate a foot control at low RPMs for any length of time, and the foot control is going to get so hot that you can't handle it, I think you're making a pretty bold statement. So we started at 5 minutes. We're down to about 3 minutes and 17 seconds now, as you can hopefully see kind of in the background there. And I think my fingers are getting tired holding the foot control down, but I wanted to have it up on the table so you could actually see this electric foot control versus the electronic one that I went by with the camera at the beginning of the video after we kind of came over to this workbench area. So, and this motor was sent to me, by the way, the motor that's in the shot that belongs to a 332, and it's an older version of the 332 motors that I've shown in a couple of my other videos. But this motor was sent to me from a gentleman down near Milwaukee, Wisconsin, along with the foot control, which happened to be that electronic one that I showed you in the shot. And he wants me to optimize his motor and his foot control. So that's kind of what really got me intrigued with this idea of electronic versus electric foot control. What's the big deal? What's the difference? How do they operate on a vintage machine versus a more contemporary machine? Kind of like some of the contemporary machines you've seen recently on my workbench. One that belonged to Mary Ann, and the other one, oh goodness, I'm blanking on her name, and forgive me if you're watching this, Rachel. The other one belonged to Rachel, which was a newer style FAF machine. And those foot controls with those two machines that belonged to Mary Ann and to Rachel, they were more like this electronic foot control. And I didn't give it any any thought at all, because that's what you would expect to find attached to a machine that's only about 8 to 10 years old versus 60 to 70 years old, like many of the machines that I work with. So we're continuing to run at a low RPM with this foot control and this FAF 332 motor, again, that peaks at about 1.3 to 1.5 amps. We've got a little bit over a minute left to go. We're at about 1 minute and 12 seconds right now, and I'm continuing to try to hold this steady as best as I can so that we can give a fair shake to the claim that Melissa made about electric foot control overheating if you operate it at a slow speed at any length of time. So we're almost down to the clock, and I'm getting ready to take a temperature test on this foot control again, so we can find out what impact we've had. We've operated this 332 motor with this electric foot control, a vintage foot control, for a little bit short of 5 minutes right now. And I'm going to throttle this puppy up at the end just to show you how low we've been running this thing. 20 seconds. 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Almost sounds like a hospital, doesn't it? All right, so what I'm going to do real quick now is I'm going to zoom in on that foot control without too much delay. All right, let's take some temps. Okay, so I'm going to take the top right away first. 63.1. I can't see my screen, folks. I apologize. Okay, taking the side. 71.9. Can you see that in the screen? Right side. 82.7. That's our highest temperature so far, 82.7. The back of it. 73.2. Finally the bottom. 69.6. Now, I'm not sure how you calculate numbers, but after operating this FAF 332 motor for 5 continuous minutes at low speed, the highest temperature we hit was about 85, 86 degrees, I think I said. You know, I'll take some more temps here just to see if there's anything erratic happening. 62.9. 66.9. Our hottest point was on the right side again. 76 degrees. So it's dropped about 5 degrees already. So if you're sewing with a electric type foot control like this versus electronic, in a matter of seconds, we had a drop of about 4 degrees with this electric foot control. And the hottest it got was about 85, 86 degrees. And that's operating at a low speed for 5 continuous minutes. Now, the average sewer is not likely to be operating a machine like that. They're going to be stopping, starting, stopping, starting, sometimes accelerating. There's going to be a variety of different things that they're going to be doing. So, I don't know if you've ever seen that program, the Mythbusters program, but I would be so bold as to say that after we just gave what I think is a fair test, and we used a tool that doesn't leave any guesswork to where that temperature is, that this statement by my friend Mel, also Melissa, on the Quilting Room with Mel about, you know, basically beware. If you use an electric foot control, it could catch on fire if you operate it at low speed for practically any amount of time at all. Well, Melissa, I think that we've proven that what you said is not correct. We just gave it a fair test, and what I find as I look at this is that you probably have a preference. You're probably partial to electronic foot controls, maybe like my customer is, that sent this motor to me from down around Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But I'll tell you one thing, before you make a declarative statement like that about, you know, it's going to get so hot you can't handle it, it's going to, you know, potentially even get so hot it's going to catch fire, you may want to do your own test as well and set your bias to the side about how you feel about electronic versus electric foot controls. Because what we just found right now, giving it a fair test and not operating a small motor, I didn't connect a foot control to a featherweight motor, you know, a 0.4 amp. This is a 1.3 amp FAF 332 motor. 1.1 to 1.3 is probably the most accurate range that it tends to run at. And we operated at a very, very slow speed for 5 minutes continuously. And the hottest temperature we got was around 85 to 86 degrees. All the other parts of the foot control were, I mean, were very, very marginal in temperature. They were almost the ambient temperature of this room. So, you know, I hope you found this to be helpful, simply because I know that lots of you out there are quilters. Lots of you out there are in love with vintage machines just like I am. And lots of you go to the internet for your answers. But the internet doesn't always reflect the truth accurately, as we just found performing this test. So be discerning when you're navigating websites, and when you're visiting blogs, and when you're seeking the advice of others out there that share our love of vintage, but they may not have that knowledge factor because they haven't gone to the effort of actually testing their position and their theory. So this is the proof in the pudding that you can operate a vintage foot control that's electric for an extended period of time. It doesn't get so hot you can't handle it. It doesn't catch fire. And the machine runs quite well with it, as a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, I'll do one last thing to wrap up this video, and that is let you listen to this motor with the electronic, and let you listen to this motor with the vintage electric foot control. And then you can let me know your own thoughts as to the sound, the power, back to that torque factor again. How does the motor sound with one foot controller versus another? I've said numerous times, foot controllers work in direct concert with the motor, and they have to be in concert. They have to be tuned up together, which is why this customer sent me the foot control and the motor. So how is one foot control versus another going to affect this motor? Let's put it to the test right now. I'm just going to come in a little bit. Okay, and I actually remembered to flip my screen around this time. Okay, so I'm going to go, I love power, right? So I'm going to go for power. So our first contestant is the electric vintage foot controller. Here we go. And if you hear some vibration, it's because this motor is not properly mounted on the bottom of a 332. I've got some weights on it to try to hold it down, but you're going to hear some vibration and some jiggling just by nature of the power of this motor. All right, so here we go. Oh, and I should show you as well. You can't probably see it in the camera, but I just did a temp check on this motor after we just fired it up and we ran all those other tests. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can. 64.5 is how warm that motor is after all that we just ran it through, including just a quick throttle up. So now I'm going to plug the electronic foot control that was sent with this motor and we'll see how this one sounds. All right, you ready? This is our electronic, which, yes, it is plastic. I'll plug this in and we'll see if there's any difference. All right, you ready? I'm hearing it dragging a little bit. There it goes, there it goes. There it goes. I hate that sound when you release it and it like plastic. Ugh. All right, you know my bias, don't you? All right, I'm going to give you the vintage one more time, real quick here. And yes, if you can see it in the camera shot, because I didn't have another specific plug-in for a 332, I took an older style plug-in that you would stick into the wall with a lamp, and I wired it to this electric foot control. Yes, you can actually get away with doing that. Crazy, huh? All right, let me see if I can get this one to go back in now. All right, so one last time for our vintage electric foot control versus the electronic you just heard. Well, my ear tells me which one I think won, but you post it in the chat or post it under this video on Facebook and let me know your thoughts. And I'm going to wrap this up one more time. We just kind of raced around with this foot control a little bit. Instead of running it super slow, we pumped it up. So I also want to get some temps on that as well, if we can do it. All right, let me get in on that, and I'll kind of move a little bit quicker than I am right now so that we can not let it drop. Okay. So different temps, here we go. Front of it, 75 degrees. Can you see that? Yep. Top of it, 70.5 degrees. Right side, that tend to be the hotter spot, 74.3 degrees. Left side, 74.6. I'm trying to turn it, there we go. And then the bottom, 71 degrees. So, Melissa, if you happen to watch this video, I love your passion for vintage machines. I love the fact that you're connecting and sharing information and being a resource to all of our friends out there that love vintage and love quilting. Kudos to you. But I am taking you to task on your claim about electronic versus electric foot controls. I think you're absolutely wrong. And while you can have your preference, you need to be accurate when you do your posts on the Quilting Room with Mel. Because I know that you seem like a person of integrity and you got to keep it right. Fair enough? All right. Appreciate all of you watching this YouTube premiere video. Appreciate you being faithful followers of what I do. And also I thank all of you that are faithful followers of Mel too. She's got some great stuff on her site if you decide you want to check it out. So stay tuned for more videos that are going to cover myth versus fact when it comes to vintage sewing machines. All right, God bless you guys. Take care. Bye.